Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 74.
We're looking at this sprawling compound housing hundreds of people, right? Managers, family members, a massive hierarchy of servants. And the very first thing we encounter isn't poetry or like beautiful silk robes.
No, it's a crime ring.
Yes, an illicit underground gambling ring. The sister of the kitchen manager is caught running a literal casino right inside the estate walls.
Which is wild.
It's crazy. And simultaneously, we learn that a trusted maid, Pinger, she's handling this wire-inlaid gold phoenix ornament, quietly telling its owner to redeem it off the books without a word.
What you're looking at there is a fully operational shadow economy.
Right.
Because when the official structure fails to provide, an unofficial structure immediately fills the vacuum. Every time. The lower-level staff are running gambling rings because their legitimate upward mobility has basically stagnated.
They're just trying to get by.
Exactly. They need a secondary, off-the-books ledger just to survive the economic squeeze. Meanwhile, the upper management is secretly liquidating the family's fixed assets, just to maintain the illusion of daily liquidity.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you there because this is where the text completely threw me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's unpack this. The woman in charge of managing this massive household is Wang Shifeng. And historically, she is notoriously strict, like practically feared by the staff.
Oh, absolutely. She's a powerhouse.
Right. So you would expect her to discover an illegal casino operating in her kitchen and just, execute a zero-tolerance purge to assert her dominance.
That would be the standard leadership playbook.
But instead, when her maid tells her about the gambling, Shifeng is totally apathetic. She essentially says she is sick, she has offended too many people, including her superior, Lady Wang, and she just wants to be a yes man to protect her own health.
She just gives up.
Why is this ruthless leader suddenly playing dead?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it seems contradictory until you look at the architecture of her authority. Shifeng is experiencing profound systemic burnout.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she isn't just tired from a heavy workload. She has realized that her mandate to enforce the rules is structurally impossible.
Because the whole system is rigged.
Precisely. The entire household operates on this invisible web of favors, nepotism, and grudges.
Yeah.
Every single time she enforces a rule, she alienates a faction she desperately needs to keep the estate actually functioning.
So her authority is basically a mirage. I mean, she is sitting in the C-suite of this aristocratic corporation, realizing the internal politics are so toxic that actually executing her job description is destroying her.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like the 18th century equivalent of an executive choosing to quietly quit rather than fight a losing battle against institutional rot.
Exactly. When an organization's formal procedures no longer align with its actual capabilities, the person tasked with enforcing those procedures is just set up to fail. She is expected to manage a crisis with zero genuine support.
Right, because if she punishes the kitchen manager's sister...
She might disrupt the food supply, or anger the faction that relies on the kitchen manager's favors. Her apathy is actually a highly rational survival strategy in a deeply irrational system.
Which brings us to the actual financial crisis that breaks her apathy. Because, you can only quietly quit until the creditors come knocking.
And they always knock eventually.
They really do. Shifeng barely manages to ignore the gambling ring when her husband, Jialian, enters the room in a state of sheer panic. The estate's financial reality has finally breached the inner sanctum.
And notice how the financial crisis is framed here. It is not about paying for essentials.
Right.
It is entirely about paying for optics.
Exactly. The estate is effectively bankrupt, but the senior authority figure, Lady Wang, has just demanded 200 taels of silver to fund the upcoming Mid-Autumn Festival.
Which is a massive sum.
But Lady Wang needs it right now, simply to cover the catering and decorations for a single holiday, because canceling the festival would signal to the outside world that the family is failing.
It is the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. If we connect this to the bigger picture, they are literally pawning their long-term future to finance their short-term public relations.
Yeah.
But the demand for the 200 taels isn't even the most dangerous part of this interaction.
No, the real bombshell is that Lady Wang didn't just ask for the money. She scolded Jialian.
She let him know she's watching.
Yeah. She revealed that she already knows he previously pawned 1,000 taels worth of the family matriarch's personal antique items to cover an earlier deficit. And worse, she knows he used a highly trusted senior maid named Yuan Yang to sneak those items out.
This is a terrifying moment for the managers.
Yeah.
Lady Wang is demanding they maintain the flawless external illusion of wealth while simultaneously letting them know she sees the desperate, illicit mechanisms they're using to fund it.
It's like a trap.
It is. She's demanding a miracle and holding a knife to their throats at the exact same time.
So Chifeng's yes man routine just instantly vanishes. She and her maid Penger go into full triage mode. They aren't just trying to find 200 tails.
Most they don't have.
Right. Xifeng ultimately has to pawn her own personal gold necklet just to get the cash for the festival. But their primary panic is figuring out how the Thousand Tail secret leaked.
The information leak is the real threat.
Exactly. They trace it back and deduce that a visiting relative, a woman referred to as the foolish sister's mother, happened to be standing in a hallway, saw a large box being moved out of the compound, and gossiped about it.
Think about the fragility of that ecosystem.
It's insane.
A sprawling empire of immense historical wealth, and its entire reputation is threatened because one random visitor saw a wooden box being carried down a corridor.
It's a full-blown paranoid information war, and what strikes me is who actually bears the risk here. Like, Ajifeng and Jialian are terrified, yes, but they are mostly terrified for the reputation of the senior maid who helped them.
Yes, Yuanyang.
Right. They know that if the rumors spread, the maid takes the fall. It feels exactly like a modern corporate scandal where the C-suite orchestrates accounting fraud, but they force a lower-level junior accountant to physically sign the dubious documents.
That's a brilliant comparison.
The executives take the financial risk, but the devastating reputational and legal risks are pushed entirely down the hierarchy.
That is the insidious nature of this hidden economy. The people at the bottom are the shock absorbers for the sins of the people at the top. The maid's entire livelihood, her safety, her future marriage prospects, they all depend entirely on her moral reputation.
And she's risking all of it.
For nothing. She is forced to risk complete social annihilation just to help her bosses hide their systemic insolvency. The hierarchy protects the managers from the consequences of their own instructions.
But Xifeng barely manages to plug this leak in their financial currency before she is completely blindsided by a sudden catastrophic crash in their social currency.
This next part is just incredible.
It really is. Just as they figure out the pawn shop leak, Lady Wang bursts into Xifeng's room.
The shift from financial panic to moral panic is instantaneous here.
And violent. Lady Wang is furious, she's in tears, and she immediately orders every servant out of the room. Then she reaches into her sleeve and hurls an object right at Xifeng.
The pouch.
Yes, it is a highly explicit pornographic scent pouch, an item that represents the absolute antithesis of the strict moral purity and refinement the aristocratic family projects to the outside world.
The presence of this object in the estate is the equivalent of a toxic spill in a pristine nature reserve. It completely contradicts their entire foundational myth of cultural superiority.
And the political backstory of how it got to Lady Wang is vicious. So a maid found this explicit pouch lying on a rock in the estate's public garden.
Just out in the open.
Yeah, but it was intercepted by a rival faction, specifically Xifeng's mother-in-law, Lady Xing. And this rival mother-in-law actively weaponized the object.
Of course she did.
She sent it directly to Lady Wang to publicly humiliate her, essentially sending the message, look at the absolute filth happening in the garden under your management.
It's a direct attack on her leadership.
Exactly. So Lady Wang, deeply humiliated and reacting entirely out of fear, assumes the pouch must belong to the only young married couple in the inner circle.
Which is Xifeng and Jialian.
Right. So she accuses Xifeng of dropping it.
You have to understand Lady Wang's psychological state here. If the elderly matriarch of the family, or heaven forbid, the outside world discovers this pouch, the family's honor is irreparably destroyed.
It's game over.
Lady Wang doesn't need the truth. She needs a scapegoat immediately. She needs a neat, tidy narrative to contain the fallout, and her subordinate, Xifeng, is the most convenient target in the room.
This is the moment that absolutely blew me away. Here's where it gets really interesting. Remember, 20 minutes ago, Xifeng was exhausted, apathetic, pawning her own jewelry just to survive the week.
Ready to give up.
But the second she is accused of this moral crime, her demeanor transforms. She is terrified. The text actually says her face turns purple with shock and she drops to her knees.
But she doesn't break.
No. She does not succumb to the emotional hysteria. Instead, she delivers a tightly constructed, hyperlogical 5-point defense. It's like watching a high-powered defense attorney step up to the podium.
It is a brilliant deconstruction of an accusation. She doesn't just issue a blanket denial. She systematically dismantles Lady Wang's logic.
Let's look at exactly how she does it, because her first instinct isn't to plead, it's to analyze the evidence.
Right.
Point 1. She picks up the pouch, examines it, and tells Lady Wang that this is cheap market garbage.
Yes.
The embroidery is poor, the tassels are low quality. Shifeng reminds her superior that she only utilizes high-end, custom luxury items.
Notice the mechanism of that defense. She is basically weaponizing class anxiety to save herself.
Wait, I actually struggled with this slightly. How does pointing out it's cheap actually prove she didn't drop it? Couldn't Lady Wang just argue that Shifeng bought a cheap item to hide her expensive tastes?
Well, she could, theoretically, but Shifeng knows exactly who her audience is. Lady Wang's entire identity and her current panic are rooted in an obsession with aristocratic status.
Oh, okay.
By loudly attacking the quality of the pouch, Shifeng aligns herself with Lady Wang's snobbery. She is subtly reminding her superior, we're aristocrats. We don't touch peasant trash.
Oh, that is so manipulative.
It immediately shifts the psychological framing. Shifeng isn't defending her morality, she's defending her refined taste, which is a much safer, more logical battleground in this society.
That makes perfect sense. She uses their shared elitism as a shield. And then she builds on that with her second point. She argues that even if she owned such an item, she would never carry it through the public garden where sisters and servants could see it and ruin her dignity.
Establishing that she's too calculating to be reckless.
Exactly. Then she moves to deflect the blame entirely. Point 3. She reminds Lady Wang that she's not the only young person in the household. There are dozens of servants who are younger and less disciplined.
She deflects the suspicion downward, exploiting that aristocratic assumption that the lower classes are inherently less moral.
Right. But then she deflects sideways, which is even more politically dangerous. Point 4. She names specific people from rival factions. She asks Lady Wang, what about the young concubines from the other branches of the family? She specifically names them, like Yan Hong, Yun, Pai Feng.
Women who frequently visit the garden.
Yes. She plants the seed that a rival branch is actually responsible for the rot. And finally, point 5. The garden is massive and porous. She points out that any number of young maids could be sneaking out or meeting up with young boys from the front gates, bringing contraband in from the outside world.
This raises an important point about how cold logic conquers emotional panic.
It totally diffuses it.
Lady Wang entered the room operating purely on fear and a desperate need for a quick resolution. Shifeng takes that chaotic energy and diffuses it by offering 5 highly plausible alternative targets. She uses the very structural flaws of their society.
Like the vast disparities in class.
Exactly. The class disparities, the presence of hostile rival family branches, the unreliability of the perimeter security, she uses all of it to completely exonerate herself.
And it works flawlessly. The text shows Lady Wang listening to this relentless logic and completely deflating. She actually apologizes, admitting she just panicked and used harsh words because she was overwhelmed by her own humiliation.
Crisis averted.
But surviving the accusation isn't what makes Shifeng a terrifyingly effective leader. It's what she does next. She doesn't just win the argument and walk away breathing a sigh of relief. She instantly pivots to capitalize on the crisis.
A true Machiavellian operator never lets a severe crisis go to waste.
Having entirely convinced Lady Wang of her innocence, Shifeng proposes a covert operation. She tells Lady Wang that they cannot launch an official investigation into the explicit pouch.
Because the rumor alone would destroy them.
Right. The mere rumor of the investigation will destroy the family's reputation faster than the pouch itself. But, she notes, we conveniently already have a gambling scandal brewing in the kitchen.
The Trojan horse.
Yes. She suggests they use the gambling crackdown as a cover. They will send a team of trusted, older, married servants into the garden that very night, under the guise of searching for dice and cards, but their real objective will be ripping apart the girls' rooms to find clues about the pouch.
It is an elegant, brutal misdirection. She is camouflaging the investigation of a socially fatal scandal beneath the investigation of a mundane administrative one.
But the truly cynical part is the secondary objective she tags onto this plan. Shifeng tells Lady Wang that while they are conducting this midnight raid, they should use the sudden moral crackdown as an excuse to systematically fire a large portion of the older, troublesome maids.
To save money.
Exactly. She frames it as a way to prevent future indiscretions, but then she explicitly says the quiet part out loud. Firing them will drastically reduce the estate's overhead costs.
And there we have the convergence of the two crises. The financial rot we discussed at the beginning is now driving the response to the moral crisis.
She takes a deeply embarrassing, highly personal accusation that nearly ruined her life. And within 5 minutes, she has weaponized it into a corporate restructuring plan to slash headcount and balance the budget.
It's stunning.
It is corporate gaslighting at its finest, firing people to save money, but framing it as a necessary purge for the sake of moral purity.
It is incredibly cynical, and it triggers a profound realization in Lady Wang. When Shifeng proposes firing these young maids to save cash, Lady Wang agrees to the plan, but she experiences this sudden, agonizing wave of guilt.
Because she remembers how it used to be.
Yes. She looks at the current diminished state of the young girls living in the garden, and she laments how far their living standards have fallen. She compares their current deprivation to the true, effortless, staggering luxury that ancestors, like Lin Dayu's mother, experienced in their youth back before the family's long decline began.
She realizes they're just cosplaying as billionaires.
Exactly. Lady Wang's nostalgic lament is really the emotional core of this entire text. The facade of wealth has entirely evaporated for the people trapped inside the house.
They're broke.
They are no longer a unified family thriving in abundance. They are a panicked, paranoid collective of survivors fighting over dwindling resources. They are actively cannibalizing their own household, turning on each other, and discarding vulnerable servants just to survive another financial quarter.
All while smiling for the public.
And the tragedy is, they are doing it while still forcing each other to pretend everything is perfectly fine. Meanwhile,
You know that feeling when you walk into the office, or maybe you're sitting down for a community board meeting,
oh yeah,
and the air in the room is just suddenly thick?
like you can cut it with a knife.
Exactly. It is just a random Tuesday, right? Nothing is officially wrong. But out of nowhere, there is this surprise policy review.
Right.
The doors are closed, someone you have barely interacted with is sitting there with a notepad, and suddenly, standard operating procedures from 5 years ago are being scrutinized, like they are capital offenses.
It is incredibly disorienting because it is always presented as an objective audit, right?
Yeah, like a necessary tightening of the ship.
Exactly. But when you actually peel back the layers of these sudden crackdowns, and you look at who is leading the charge and who is being targeted, it is almost never about the actual rules.
No, never.
It is entirely about power, and specifically about someone asserting dominance because they feel, their control slipping. It is a classic scenario.
It really is.
Remarkably modern. I mean, we are looking at a very specific incident here.
The night raid.
Yes, this sudden politically motivated night raid on the young residents of this sprawling estate, which is known as the Grandview Garden.
Right. So to understand how a witch hunt like this actually gets off the ground, we have to look at the environment right before the match is struck.
The baseline conditions.
Yeah, the setting is crucial. We have Lady Wang. Think of her as the matriarch, essentially the CEO of this internal domestic sphere, and she is incredibly stressed.
Oh, beyond stressed.
The sources point out that she explicitly complains about lacking the staff to properly monitor this massive garden estate. She is overwhelmed, she is understaffed, and she's completely disconnected from what the younger generation is actually doing on the ground floor.
Which leaves her primed for paranoia. I mean, a leader who feels they are losing their grip on an organization, they are in a very fragile state. That insecurity creates this massive vacuum of authority.
Right.
And in any hierarchy, whether it is an aristocratic household or, a modern corporation, opportunistic subordinates will always rush in to fill that vacuum.
They smell blood in the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they do this by manufacturing a crisis that makes them look indispensable to the anxious leader.
I'm looking at the notes here, and the way this crisis is manufactured is just so calculating.
It is entirely deliberate.
The raid does not happen in a vacuum. Lady Wang is meeting with 5 managers, but the fuse is lit by the arrival of an older servant, Wang Shenbao's wife.
Right. She is the catalyst.
She brings up this recently discovered scandalous purse found in the garden, but the literary analysis we are working from explicitly reveals her internal monologue here.
Yeah, the text leaves absolutely no ambiguity about her motives. Wang Shenbao's wife does not care about the moral implications of this purse.
Not at all.
What she cares about is her bruised ego. She deeply resents the young maids in the garden because they do not flatter her.
They do not kiss the ring.
Exactly. They do not show her the deference she feels she deserves as this older servant. So she wants to find a way to create trouble for them, to remind them of their place at the bottom of the ladder.
Wow.
And this purse is just the convenient excuse she's been waiting for.
So she suggests a surprise lockdown and a search of the entire premises, essentially because people aren't sucking up to her. And Lady Wang, the boss, she completely buys into it. She agrees to the raid, lamenting that these young maids are acting like arrogant, titled ladies and need to be disciplined.
It is a perfect storm of insecurities.
We started by comparing this to a corporate turf war, but looking at the source texts, it actually feels much more biological to me.
How so?
Well, Lady Wang is acting like an autoimmune disease. The household is stressed, so her managerial immune system is tricked into attacking its own healthy cells just to feel like it is fighting a disease.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it. I mean, morality is being weaponized here as the mechanism for the attack.
Right.
Wang Shanbao's wife is using the guise of a moral crackdown to settle a petty personal vendetta.
While Lady Wang is just trying to soothe her own anxieties.
Exactly. Her fear is genuine, even if it is deeply paranoid. She is terrified of losing control over the youth, particularly her son, Baiyu.
She thinks the environment is corrupting him.
Yes, specifically the young women working in it. So instead of looking at her own management style or her son's actual behavior, she scapegoats the rank-and-file employees.
And the moment they agree to this massive investigation, they immediately single out their first target. And this is the part that is just so telling to me.
Because it has nothing to do with the purse.
Nothing. The target has absolutely nothing to do with any evidence related to the scandalous purse. They do not follow a trail of clues. They follow their own biases.
They proceed based entirely on personal animosity and physical appearances. Wang Shanbao's wife immediately targets a maid named Qingwen.
Right?
And the specific complaints she levies against her are fascinating. She tells Lady Wang that Qingwen is too beautiful, that her dressed-up appearance is inappropriate, and she specifically calls her a sick shishi.
Now, for some context for you listening, Shishi is a famous historical Chinese beauty, so calling her a sick Shishi is basically branding her as this dramatic, overly alluring seductress.
It is a direct attack on her confidence and her physical presence.
It really is.
She also complains about Qingwen's sharp tongue, noting that if you disagree with her, she just glares and curses at you. And this description instantly triggers Lady Wang.
Because she suddenly remembers seeing a girl scolding a younger maid recently.
Right.
And the way Lady Wang describes her in her memory is so incredibly specific and physical. She remembers a water snake waist and sloping shoulders. She is hyper-fixated on this girl's body.
Notice the sociology of scapegoating at work here. Qingwen's mere existence, her unapologetic confidence, her physical beauty, her refusal to be invisible, it threatens the conservative, uniform order of this household.
Because rigid hierarchies rely on uniformity to maintain control.
Precisely. When someone stands out, even unintentionally, they highlight the artificiality of the system. Lady Wang is projecting all of her maternal anxieties about her son being corrupted entirely onto Qingwen's physical form.
Which is wild if you are listening to this and you have ever been told in a performance review that you are too loud or too ambitious.
Or that your tone is intimidating.
Yes. If you have heard that, you will immediately recognize what is happening to Qingwen here. Because Lady Wang summons her immediately with zero warning.
And Qingwen is actually genuinely sick that day.
Right. She has been resting, feeling unwell. So she arrives at the boss's office completely unadorned. The text notes her hair is loose, her clothes are slipping.
And the irony here is devastating.
It really is, because this lack of formal presentation, which is a direct result of her being physically ill, is interpreted by Lady Wang as an intentional, provocative act.
It throws gasoline on Lady Wang's rage. She takes one look at Qingwen, sees the physical manifestation of her own anxieties, and immediately accuses her of acting like a seductress.
She says, "What is it? What a beauty. You really do look like a sick shishi."
Who are you putting on this frivolous act for?
Exactly. She has already convicted the maid in her mind before asking a single relevant question.
Wow.
Destroying Qingwen becomes a symbolic way for Lady Wang to reassert control over the entire garden. So Qingwen has just been dragged into the hot seat by an enraged boss who has already decided she is guilty of existing too loudly. We now get to examine her response, which is brilliant.
Here's a masterclass.
Instead of bursting into tears or passionately defending her moral character, she suppresses her anger and deploys this incredibly pragmatic defense.
She defends her job description.
She completely outmaneuvers Lady Wang by strictly adhering to the organizational chart. She says, "I was assigned here by the grandmother."
Invoking the ultimate authority.
Right, the one person above Lady Wang. Then she states her specific duties are purely to watch the outer room and do needlework. And then she plays this incredible card.
Weaponized incompetence.
Yes, she claims incompetence. She says she told the grandmother she was clumsy, and she purposefully distances herself from the daily intimate care of the young master, Bao Yu.
She explicitly points out that older women and other specific maids handle his daily routines, not her.
So why does that work? Why does claiming clumsiness actually work as a defensive shield here?
Because in a rigid hierarchy, power and threat both flow from specialized usefulness. By claiming she is useless at caring for the son, she removes herself from the zone of threat.
Ah, I see.
Lady Wang's paranoia requires an active seductress. So by playing dead, by claiming she only sits in the outer room and sews, Qingwen short-circuits the boss's threat detection system.
She forces Lady Wang to argue against the established hierarchy and the stated scope of work, rather than arguing about vague moral failings.
Exactly.
But I want to push back on the effectiveness of this strategy for a moment, because I am looking at the translation of the scene, and Lady Wang listens to this defense and says, oh, thank goodness, if you stay away from him, that's a blessing.
Right, she seems to believe her.
She does. But in the exact same breath, Lady Wang says, since the grandmother gave you to him, I will report to the grandmother tomorrow, and then I will fire you.
Yeah.
So did Qingwen's defense actually succeed? I mean, it seems like she won the argument but still lost her job. Did she just seal her own fate by embarrassing the boss with airtight logic?
You are hitting on a vital limitation of logic in a toxic environment. You cannot logic your way out of a predetermined emotional verdict.
Wow, that is a great way to put it.
Qingwen won the battle of facts. She proved she was not violating her job description. But in doing so, she did not flatter Lady Wang, she did not grovel, and she exposed the absurdity of the accusation.
And in a dysfunctional hierarchy, proving the boss wrong is often a worse crime than actually breaking a rule.
Precisely. Lady Wang's decision to fire her anyway proves that the interrogation was never a fact-finding mission. It was a power play. And Qingwen refused to play the role of the submissive victim.
That is deeply chilling. So Qingwen leaves, justifiably furious, crying all the way back. She survives the skirmish, but the full-scale war is about to begin.
The midnight raid commences.
We need to slow down here and look at the geography of this event because the sheer scale of the invasion is terrifying. They literally lock the gates.
The logistics are incredibly intense. They trap everyone inside.
Imagine a massive estate suddenly thrown into a siege mentality in the middle of the night.
And the very first people they catch are the Night Watch women. And what is their grand crime? They are caught hoarding extra candles and lamp oil.
Which the raiding party immediately deems stolen goods.
Right. It perfectly illustrates the nature of these audits. When a raiding party is mobilized, they have to justify their own existence.
If they do not find the scandalous purse they're looking for, they have to find something.
Exactly. Suddenly, basic survival mechanisms, like an employee hoarding a bit of extra lamp oil in a massive, dark estate, are criminalized to validate the witch hunt.
It is the classic tactic of, we couldn't find the smoking gun, so we are raiding you up for a messy desk.
Eventually, the raiding party reaches Bayu's courtyard, where the young maids live. And here we see two completely opposite reactions to this invasion.
Right, let's look at the first maid they target, Surin. Her strategy is survival through appeasement.
She meekly and cooperatively opens all her trunks and boxes for them to search.
She believes that if she demonstrates she has nothing to hide, the system will protect her.
It is a very understandable trauma response in a hostile environment. Keep your head down, follow the absurd orders, and hope the storm passes over you.
But now contrast that with Qingwen, who has already been traumatized by her interrogation earlier that day.
She is done playing games.
When they demand to search her trunk, the other maids try to open it for her to keep the peace. But Qingwen physically bursts into the room.
She grabs her own trunk.
And she dramatically, violently dumps everything upside down onto the floor right in front of them.
It is such a powerful image.
There is nothing illicit in her trunk, but the act itself is striking. It reminds me of passive resistance movements. Compliance that is so aggressive it actually breaks the system.
She is weaponizing the audit against the auditors. She is utilizing radical physical defiance to protest the violation of her boundaries.
Because appeasement implicitly validates the authority of the searchers, right?
Exactly. Appeasement says, you have the right to look, and I will prove my innocence. Qingwen's action says, you have no moral right to do this, but since you have the physical power to force it, I will expose the ugliness of your actions by doing it for you.
Wow.
She reclaims a tiny fraction of agency in a situation where she is entirely powerless. It forces the oppressors to look at the mess they are making.
And Wang Shanbao's wife actually feels awkward after that display.
She really does.
While all this high drama is happening with the maids, we need to talk about the person actually leading this raid, Xifeng.
Ah, Xifeng.
Think of Xifeng as the pragmatic middle manager trapped between a destructive CEO and reality. Watching her navigate this is fascinating.
She is in an incredibly precarious position. She has been ordered by Lady Wang to execute this raid. She cannot refuse.
But she also knows that this raid is a terrible idea based on flimsy gossip.
And she understands the political liabilities involved.
Yeah, because when they are moving through the garden, Xifeng explicitly forbids the raiding party from searching the room of Xi Baochai.
We need to clarify who this is.
Right. Xi Baochai is a VIP guest, a relative staying in the garden. Xifeng literally says, "We only search our own people. We absolutely do not search a relative's room."
Xifeng understands the political reality that Wang Shanbao's wife does not. Wang Shanbao's wife is drunk on the sudden power to punish people beneath her.
She is not thinking about the big picture.
Not at all. But in an aristocratic Chinese household, offending a relative who is a guest is a massive diplomatic failure.
And Xifeng understands that if you insult a VIP, the fallout will not land on the lowly servant who suggested the raid.
No, it will land squarely on the manager who executed it. Xifeng is actively mitigating organizational risk here.
And we see her do this again later in the night. The raiding party goes into the room of another maid, Ziwan.
Think of Ziwan as an entry-level employee in a completely different department.
Right. And Wang Shenbao's wife hits what she thinks is the jackpot. She excitedly pulls out 2 old amulets, a belt, and a couple of fans belonging to the young master, Bao Yu.
She thinks she has found the smoking gun.
She calls Xifeng over to verify this contraband, and Xifeng casually swats it down.
She just laughs.
She does. She laughs and says, "Bao Yu and these girls grew up together, playing together since they were kids. Obviously, they have some of his old childhood things. This isn't rare or scandalous."
Xifeng uses context to destroy the manufactured crisis. Wang Shanbao's wife wants to view these items in a vacuum as evidence of illicit adult behavior.
But Xifeng reintroduces the historical context.
Right, these are children who grew up in the same house. By doing so, she protects Ziwan, but more importantly, she prevents the audit from spiraling into an unmanageable scandal that she would then be responsible for cleaning up.
It is a brilliant diffusion technique.
Containing the fire your boss started without letting them know you were actively putting it out.
But the sheer act of searching the private rooms of the family's own daughters is a massive, unprecedented insult.
It really is.
It is a baseline assumption of guilt.
Right, and it's a violation of trust that's masquerading as a standard administrative audit.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
By crossing the threshold of these private sanctuaries, the leadership is signaling that the old social contracts just no longer apply.
Wow.
Yeah, no one is safe and no one is above suspicion.
The target of this particular search, this Tanshan, she does not react the way the search party expects, like at all.
Not even a little bit.
She gets tipped off that they are coming. And instead of playing the victim, she decides to completely flip the script on her interrogators.
Which is brilliant, because the standard psychological response when an authority figure comes to search your space is, well, panic.
Yeah, your heart drops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you're completely innocent, you instinctively shrink.
Yeah.
You let the authority dictate the terms of the encounter, you answer their questions, you hand over what they ask for.
Sure.
But Tanshan does the exact opposite. She seizes control of the framing before they even walk through the door.
She goes fully theatrical with it.
Oh, totally.
Instead of cowering in the dark, she orders her maids to light every single candle in her quarters.
She lights the place up.
She throws the doors wide open, and she just sits there in the blazing light waiting for them.
I love that image.
And when Xifeng finally arrives and tries to play it cool with these polite bureaucratic excuses, saying things like, "Oh, we're just doing a routine check to clear everyone's suspicions. It's actually for your own protection."
The classic corporate line.
Right. Tanshan hits back with just devastating sarcasm.
She refuses to let Xifeng hide behind that corporate speak. What's fascinating here, she doesn't just deny being a thief. She aggressively volunteers herself as the criminal mastermind of the entire estate.
Yes. She looks right at them and says, "Our maids are naturally all thieves, and I am the #1 thief chief."
Thief chief. It's so good.
It's iconic. And then she takes it a step further. She demands that her maids open every single mirror, every makeup box, every clothing bundle.
Everything.
And she tells Shifeng to search absolutely everything. It reminds me of a modern workplace scenario.
Oh, how so?
Well, imagine, an insanely aggressive HR auditor is coming to your office to find a specific mistake, right?
Okay, yeah.
Instead of quietly handing over the one file they asked for, you proactively print out every single document, every email, every receipt from the last 5 years.
Oh, my God.
You dump the entire mountain of paper right onto their desk, look them dead in the eye, and say, read it all, I'll wait.
That is a perfect modern equivalent. I mean, you're paralyzing them with compliance.
Yes, paralyzing them with compliance.
In organizational psychology, we'd call Tanshin's strategy a demonstration of extreme accountability. But she is weaponizing it.
Weaponized accountability, I like that.
By dumping all the information on them at once, you remove the thrill of the hunt. You force the authority figure to actually do the exhausting labor they were trying to use as an intimidation tactic.
It's cognitive overload as a defense mechanism.
Exactly.
But she's also doing something highly specific with her staff during this, right?
Yes, she is.
Tanshin draws a very hard line in the sand regarding her maids. She tells the search party, look, you can search my belongings, but you are strictly forbidden from touching my maid's things.
Total boundary.
She claims absolute knowledge and control over her staff. She states she holds everything they own down to the last needle and thread. She says, if you want to search, you only search me.
Which is just brilliant leadership.
Right.
By taking on all the suspicion herself, by crowning herself the thief chief, she is deliberately shielding her vulnerable subordinates from the trauma and humiliation of being rummaged through by this mob.
Yeah, she steps right in front of him.
Simultaneously, she establishes immediate moral superiority over Shifeng and the search party. She exposes the absurdity of their raid by leaning into it so heavily that the search party becomes the ones who feel entirely inappropriate and uncomfortable.
They're the ones sweating now.
Exactly.
But this is where the scene sort of shifts gears. Because it's a brilliant tactical move, but suddenly it goes from being this sharp intellectual chess match to something deeply emotional.
It really does.
Because right after laying down this ironclad boundary and staring down the manager, Tanshin, who has been so tough and sarcastic, suddenly starts to weep.
Yeah.
And as a reader, it's jarring. Why does a routine search for stolen goods completely break her heart?
Well, because she isn't crying about the stolen goods.
Right.
And she certainly isn't crying out of fear. She is crying because she understands exactly what the existence of this search party represents for the future of her entire lineage.
The bigger picture.
Exactly.
She delivers this devastating critique right to Sang's face. Tanshin brings up another wealthy aristocratic family, the Zen family, who had recently been raided by the authorities and completely ruined.
A very real threat in their world.
Right, and she points out the dark, tragic irony her own family is now raiding itself.
Yeah.
And then she drops this ancient proverb. She says, a centipede dies but never falls down.
That is such a haunting line.
It really is. She tearfully declares that a massive, powerful family like theirs cannot be destroyed from the outside.
Right.
It has to kill itself from within what she calls self-slaughter to truly face ruin.
It's a profound moment of macro-level clarity from a character who is otherwise entirely trapped in the micro-level drama.
But, okay, I want to challenge this for a second.
Go for it.
We are talking about an audit for a missing item.
Right.
So what does this all mean? She's basically saying a massive creature has so many legs, it stays upright even when its brain is dead. I get the poetry of it. But why does a minor internal investigation trigger this massive doom and gloom prophecy for the entire family? Isn't she leaping to an extreme conclusion here?
I mean, it absolutely seems like a massive overreaction until you look at the underlying mechanics of how large institutions actually fail.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the centipede is the perfect metaphor for massive, entrenched organizations.
Right, like we were saying at the top of the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about a sprawling corporate monopoly or a centuries-old political dynasty. They have so much wealth, such dense bureaucratic structures, and so many institutional defenses that external attacks, competitors, market crashes, minor scandals, they'd barely put a dent in them.
They just brush it off.
The 100 legs keep the body standing no matter what the outside world does.
Okay, so then what actually kills the centipede?
The destruction of its internal nervous system, which, in an organization, is trust. Right. When leadership decides to violate its own safe spaces, like tearing apart the private sanctuaries of the daughters, it sends a loud, undeniable signal to the entire organization that the rules no longer apply.
The gloves are off.
The social contract is void. And once you incentivize paranoia, different factions start raiding each other's departments just to prove who has more power.
Right. It becomes a turf war.
Exactly. Everyone stops working for the good of the whole and starts acting out of pure, hyper-defensive self-preservation. That is the actual mechanism of decay.
Wow.
Tunchin recognizes that this late-night search party is not the disease. It is the terminal symptom. It is the family cannibalizing its own dignity to satisfy internal paranoia.
It's one thing to philosophize about an empire collapsing from a distance, right? But Tanshin is instantly forced to deal with that rot right in front of her face.
Yeah, she doesn't get to just be a philosopher here.
No, because right after this high-level philosophical morning, we get a brutal reminder of the absolute foolishness happening in the room. Enter a servant Wang Shanbao's wife.
Ah, yes. The catalyst for the explosion.
The absolute worst.
This is where the macro theory meets immediate, visceral reality.
So here's where it gets really fascinating. Because this servant, Wang Shanbao's wife, is the ultimate toxic middle manager on a power trip.
Just textbook.
But to really understand why she acts the way she does, we have to unpack the hierarchy a little bit here.
Okay, let's do it.
Tanxun is a shuchu, meaning she's the daughter of a concubine, not the primary wife.
Right.
Meanwhile, Wang Shanbao's wife is a favored servant of one of the elder matriarchs, Sheng Madam. So break this down for us. Why does a servant feel she can disrespect the daughter of the house?
Well, this is a classic example of the principal agent problem operating within a rigid class hierarchy.
Okay.
In this world, being born to a concubine meant your status was theoretically high. I mean, you were still a master, but socially it was always slightly precarious.
Right. You're a master, but with an asterisk.
Exactly. You didn't have the ironclad backing of the primary bloodline. Wang Shanbao's wife, on the other hand, is merely an agent, a servant.
Yeah.
But because her principal is Xing Madam, a senior executive in this family, the servant wields immense, unearned, borrowed power.
She walks around wearing her boss's authority like a bulletproof vest.
That is exactly it. She looks at Tanshin, and all she sees is the vulnerability of her birth status. She assumes that because Tanshin is a concubine's daughter, she won't dare cause a real scene and risk drawing negative attention from the elders.
She thinks Tanxun is an easy target.
Right. Wang Shanbao's wife thinks Tanshin is just throwing a tantrum directed at Xinfeng, and she decides, this is her moment to step in, show off her own borrowed authority, and suck up to her bosses by putting this young girl in her place.
And she crosses a massive physical and social boundary.
It's huge.
She steps forward, reaches out, physically lifts Kanshun's clothing, and laughs. She actually says, "Look, I've even searched the young lady herself, and there's nothing here."
I mean, it is an incredibly invasive, brazenly disrespectful act.
It's shocking.
She is testing the fences of the hierarchy, assuming the electric current is turned off.
Oh, but she finds out it is very much on.
Oh, yeah.
The response is immediate. Smack.
Just right across the face.
Kanshun slaps this servant right across the face. Just a furious, explosive backhand.
That is such a visceral moment.
And she completely goes off on her. She calls her a dog relying on its master's power who does nothing but create chaos.
Ouch.
And then, to really drive the point home, Tanshin starts undoing her own clothes.
Right.
She demands that Shifeng, who is her equal, her sister-in-law, a fellow master, search her personally. She absolutely refuses to let a slave touch her body.
The sociology of this slap is just incredible to analyze. I mean, this servant weaponized Tanshin's birth status to try and physically humiliate her. She thought the polite rules of the hierarchy wouldn't protect a concubine's daughter.
But I have to push back on this a little.
Okay.
In almost any modern organization, or even historical ones, physically striking someone means you have completely lost control.
Usually, yes.
Right. It's an escalation that usually gets you fired or condemned. How is this slap a strategic victory for Tanshin and not just a young woman, completely losing her temper?
It looks like a loss of control until you realize what happens when formal systems of justice fail.
Okay, unpack that.
You have to remember the context. The polite, formal hierarchy has already been breached the moment the search party walked into her room. The state's monopoly on order, so to speak, has broken down.
Because they're already treating her like a criminal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wang Shanbao's wife lifting Tanshin's clothes proved that the rules of respect were entirely gone. When the formal, polite hierarchy fails to protect your bodily autonomy and your dignity, the only way to reestablish a boundary is physically.
So you're saying she had to speak the only language the invading force actually understood?
Precisely. The slap wasn't just raw anger, though it was obviously fueled by it. It was a physical manifestation of reestablishing order. Tanshin is essentially saying, if the managers of this family are going to abandon the law and act like thugs, well, I will establish my own borders through absolute physical dominance.
She matches their energy.
She beats their energy. It forces everyone in the room to snap out of the delusion that this is just a routine administrative check. You can't pretend this is a polite audit when the young lady of the house is striking the staff and unbuttoning her own collar in a rage.
And the dialogue backs that up entirely. She says, "You are a dog relying on its master's power." Tanshin isn't just attacking this one servant.
No.
She is indicting the toxic culture of the whole family, calling out that exact principal agent problem you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
She's highlighting a system where low-level people are allowed to terrorize others just because they are allied with the right executive.
She is diagnosing the exact disease that is killing the centipede right to their faces.
So let's look at how the dust settles after this explosive slap.
It's tense.
That's very. We have a stinging cheek, a furious young woman, and a very uncomfortable search party.
How does the rest of the room, particularly the actual manager, Shifeng, react to Tanshin completely asserting dominance?
Well, Shifeng, who is normally a brilliant, ruthless politician in her own right, is completely back on her heels.
She's stunned.
Totally.
Yeah.
She immediately shifts from aggressor to damage control.
She starts scrambling. I mean, she scolds the servant. She tries to blame the whole physical invasion on the servant being drunk or crazy.
Throwing her right under the bus.
Oh, immediately. And she desperately tries to appease Tanshin. She's looking for any off-ramp to de-escalate the situation.
But Tanshin refuses to give her one. She doesn't back down an inch. Instead, she traps Shifeng in a procedural nightmare.
Oh, I love this part.
Right? Tanshin threatens to escalate the issue to the absolute highest authorities in the family, the old lady and the lady, first thing the very next morning.
She goes right to the top.
She says she will gladly go and apologize for losing her temper and slapping a servant. But in doing so, she will force the supreme leadership to address the physical insult she suffered during this unsanctioned raid.
It's brilliant. She's saying, I will report myself just to ensure you go down with me.
Exactly.
And while all this high-level, tense negotiation is happening inside, we get this amazing little coda outside the window that ties everything together.
The maid.
Yes. The humiliated servant, Wang Shanbao's wife, is outside muttering complaints, trying to save face by saying she's going to quit and go back to her old home.
Just grumbling in the dark.
Right. And Tanshin's maid, Daishu, steps right out and talks back to her fearlessly.
It's incredible.
Daishu basically says, if you leave, that's our good fortune, but I doubt you actually have the guts to go.
Which brings us full circle to the very beginning of the scene. This raises an important question about how you lead people, because this is where we see the actual return on investment of Tanshin's leadership style.
It's the direct result of that extreme accountability we talked about.
Exactly. Think back to the first move Tanshin made. She drew a hard line and said, "You cannot search my maids."
She protected them.
She extended her own power and took on immense personal risk to shield her vulnerable staff. Now look at the result of that psychological safety. Her maid, Daishu, is fiercely loyal and entirely unafraid.
Yeah.
She feels totally empowered to step outside and fight her master's battles against a terrifying senior elder servant.
It's a closed loyalty loop. Tanshin protects her people, so her people protect her.
It's beautiful to watch.
It really is. It is the exact opposite of the toxic, self-serving, backstabbing behavior modeled by the search party and the larger family structure.
It proves that a functional, high-trust microculture can exist, even if the macroculture is completely decaying.
Even Shifeng recognizes it, right? She laughs at the maid's boldness and remarks, like master, like servant.
It's a total concession of defeat. Shifeng realizes she has been completely outmaneuvered tactically, morally, and physically.
And the detail I love the most here is the ultimate sign of respect. Shifeng actually calls off the search for the moment.
She stops.
She waits respectfully until Tanshin finishes getting ready for bed and actually goes to sleep before she quietly gathers her humiliated search party and moves them along to the next location.
It's amazing.
Tanshin literally forces the audit to wait until she is comfortably asleep.
Tanshin wins the battle, unequivocally.
Oh.
She defended her borders, she protected her people, and she humiliated the corrupt middle management.
A total victory.
But remember the metaphor of the centipede?
Right.
She knows that despite this tactical victory tonight, she is still losing the war. The disease is still in the house.
Well, the whole premise of this raid is built on a fundamental panic. I mean, right from the top.
Because the estate is huge.
Oh, massive. The Gia family estate operates basically like a medium-sized municipality. You have hundreds of servants, these layered hierarchies, and massive daily expenditures.
And they are quietly running out of money at this point in the story, right?
Yeah. The family's wealth is secretly hemorrhaging, and the physical walls of the garden are supposed to keep that pure interior totally separate from the corrupt exterior.
But then they find something that ruins all of that.
Exactly. An incredibly obscene item, a pornographic purse, is just found sitting in the garden. And that single object completely shatters the illusion of airtight security.
I mean, that's like finding a loaded weapon in a preschool.
Mhm.
It triggers this massive zero-tolerance sweep in the middle of the night.
Yeah, the authorities are hunting for contraband, operating under this assumption that the rot is coming from the bottom up.
So the search party is just massive. They're sweeping through the courtyards with lanterns, literally dragging maids out of bed.
It's a full-on tactical raid.
It really is. Major collision happens at the room of one of the youngest sisters, Chichun. They force open a box belonging to her childhood maid, Ruwa.
And what they find completely defies the expectations of this supposedly sheltered garden.
Right. They pull out 30 to 40 gold and silver ingots, a really valuable jade belt, and then completely inexplicably, a pair of men's boots and socks.
Which is just a huge systemic red flag. Finding that much physical wealth in men's clothing in a strictly gender-segregated space implies a shadow economy is operating right under management's nose.
Yeah, the sheer volume of that capital is staggering for a servant. Ruha is completely terrified. I mean, the color drains from her face, she collapses.
And the backstory she spills reveals so much about the precarious economics of that era.
Because the items aren't actually stolen from the estate, are they?
No, they're not. They were a legitimate reward given to your brother by a powerful master of the house.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you got this huge stash of wealth, but her brother has no access to secure banking.
Exactly. Their parents are down south, so the brother is stuck living with this deeply unreliable uncle and aunt who are, frankly, gambling addicts.
So he calculated that the only secure vault he had access to was his sister's trunk inside the heavily guarded Grandview garden. He used the strict segregation of the garden as a firewall against his own family.
What's fascinating here is how the discovery of this stash sets up a completely bizarre, counterintuitive reaction from the two women in charge.
Right, because on one side you have Fenji, the iron-fisted chief operating officer of the estate who's personally leading this raid.
And by all accounts, she should be the one to orchestrate a really severe punishment.
But instead, she looks at the silver in the boots, listens to the story, and effectively just issues a pardon.
Yeah, she realizes that if the story holds up, the only actual infraction is logistical smuggling moving unauthorized items across the garden threshold. She dismisses it as a first offense.
Which is so surprising. Why is the strict boss playing good cop here?
Well, Fengji's leniency exposes the mechanics of true authority. Because she manages hundreds of employees and handles these massive daily crises, her calculus is entirely pragmatic.
Ah, so she knows his zero-tolerance policy would backfire.
Exactly. A strict ideological application of zero tolerance would force her to fire or punish half her workforce. It would collapse the estate's operations.
Right. She understands the crucial difference between a logistical rule break driven by desperation and a malicious moral failing.
And she possesses the institutional capital to just absorb a minor infraction without it threatening her own status.
But that pragmatism is a really stark contrast to Ji-chan. I mean, Shi-chan is just a teenager, and the maid belongs to her. You'd think she'd be relieved that management is letting her servant off the hook.
Oh, but she is the exact opposite. Shi-chan just panics.
Yeah, why is a teenager acting like a tyrant? She demands that Fenji take Ruhua outside and beat her, sell her, or even execute her.
It's wild. Si-chan explicitly states that even if management forgives the maid, she refuses to accept her back.
It's like a captain sealing the watertight doors on a sinking ship while her own crew is still trapped inside. She's mathematically calculating that amputating her oldest friend is the only way to stop the infection of scandal.
It's the brutal mathematics of status fragility, really. Si-chan has zero actual power in the household hierarchy.
Right, she doesn't control the money or the staff.
Exactly. Her entire social currency is tied to her ideological purity and her pristine reputation. In a high-context aristocratic society, association is everything.
So if her maid is tainted by a smuggling scandal, Xijin believes that taint transfers directly to her.
Yes. Lacking the institutional security that Fengji has, Xichen uses cruelty as her only available defense mechanism. She destroys a loyal servant just to broadcast her own uncompromising morality.
Wow. But while Rupa was caught by accident holding family money, the real fireworks happen when the search party targets its own bloodline.
Oh, this next part is a masterclass in bureaucratic cannibalism.
So they move on to the quarters of another sister, Ying Chun. And accompanying the raid, Annie Wang. We all know this archetype.
Oh, definitely. She's the ultimate zealot.
Yeah, this middle management enforcer who gets her entire sense of self-worth from catching other people breaking the rules. She is practically vibrating with excitement to find hidden sins.
Completely convinced that her own faction is, above suspicion.
Right. But Nanny Wang's participation perfectly illustrates how zero-tolerance policies inevitably consume their creators.
Yeah, when an institution incentivizes people to act as moral inquisitors, they stop looking at evidence objectively and just start hunting for status.
And they become blind to their own vulnerabilities. Because Nanny Wang leads the vanguard right up to the belongings of her very own granddaughter, a maid named Siki.
And the contraband they pull out of Siki's box is just catastrophic.
It's so bad. They find men's shoes, a decorative concentric knot, and a small package containing a red double happiness letter.
Now, we had a crucial socioeconomic gap here because Nanny Wang is actually illiterate.
Right. She recognizes the shoes are a problem and panics. But when she sees the paper covered in characters, she attempts this desperate spin control.
She tries to claim it's just a messy account book, right?
Oh, yes. She's literally begging the searchers not to laugh at her granddaughter's poor handwriting.
Which is just a devastating moment of dramatic irony. Because Fengji, as the manager...
Oh, yeah. She takes one look at the red paper and bursts out laughing. It is definitely not an account book.
No, it's a secret, highly explicit love letter from Siki's cousin, Pan Yuan. It discusses their parents finding out about their feelings, coordinates a secret rendezvous inside the garden, and mentions exchanging scent deeds.
I mean, talk about an auditor launching a massive corporate fraud investigation, only to publicly bust their own family member in front of the whole board.
That's exactly what it feels like. And in a society where marriages are strictly arranged strategic alliances, a clandestine romance is an existential threat to the family's order.
The physical reaction to this realization is intense. Nanny Wang is so utterly humiliated that she starts violently slapping her own face.
Yeah, she curses herself out loud, calling herself an old fool.
While everyone else just stands around laughing and throwing sarcastic comments at her. It's dark comedy at its finest.
But that self-flagellation is actually a mechanical requirement of a high-context, shame-based culture.
How so? Like she has to do it to survive.
Exactly. When a subordinate's transgression is exposed so publicly, the only way the grandmother can survive the social fallout is to aggressively perform her own shame.
Oh, so by hitting herself and shouting insults, she's trying to preempt the group's punishment.
Right. She's signaling that she aligns with the dominant moral order, even at the expense of her own flesh and blood. It's a desperate performance to salvage whatever social standing she has left.
But the most fascinating part isn't the grandmother's meltdown, honestly. It's the granddaughter's reaction.
Siki's reaction is incredible.
Yeah. Siki, the one who actually smuggled the love letter, stands entirely motionless. While her grandmother beats herself and the crowd mocks them, Siki just keeps her head bowed in total silence.
She doesn't weep, she doesn't beg for mercy, no excuses. She just stands there like a statue.
And that silence short-circuits the entire disciplinary mechanism of the raid, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. In this hierarchical system, authority is reestablished through the subordinates' active participation in their own degradation. The master demands submission, and the servant provides tears.
But by refusing to show fear or shame, Siki completely denies Fengji the moral authority of the raid. It turns an HR disciplinary hearing into a hostage negotiation, where the hostage refuses to blink.
That's a great way to put it. Fengji is staring at a subordinate who has clearly committed a fireable offense, but she hesitates. She actually delays handing down an immediate punishment.
And she does this because she recognizes that Siki is a wild card.
Exactly. Fengji calculates the psychological danger of an unashamed subordinate. Siki knows her life in the garden is over, but her silent defiance indicates a very dangerous level of pride.
So Fengji realizes that if she corners Siki with a public trial right then and there, Siki might commit suicide out of pride.
Right. And while a dismissed maid is a logistical footnote, a maid hanging herself in the garden is a massive PR disaster that would bring the elder generation's wrath down on Fengji's head.
Which means this toxic environment of suspicion and betrayal doesn't just cause interpersonal drama, it literally breaks people down.
Oh, the physical toll is undeniable.
Because the sheer administrative and psychological friction of this night, the weeping, the self-flagellation, the terrifying silence, creates a breaking point. By the time Fengji returns to her quarters, her body begins to fail.
The text is very clinical about her symptoms, actually.
Yeah, she experiences severe hemorrhaging, intense dizziness, and an extreme physical weakness that leaves her unable to even stand. They have to halt the administrative functions of the house to bring in a doctor.
And the doctor's diagnosis provides a really profound look into traditional Chinese medicine and how it maps systemic stress onto the physical body.
Okay, so what exactly does the doctor say is wrong with her?
He diagnoses Fenji with a severe deficiency of qi. And in this medical framework, qi isn't some mystical aura. It is the literal functional energy that allows the organs to perform their tasks.
Right.
Specifically, extreme worry and administrative overwork deplete the spleen and stomach qi, which is responsible for holding the body's structures and fluids in place.
Oh, wow. So when that energy collapses, you get prolapse and hemorrhaging.
Exactly. The doctor prescribes heavy doses of ginseng and astragalus.
And those aren't just generic wellness herbs either. They are heavy-duty adaptogens prescribed specifically to lift sunken energy and force the body's systems back online.
Her body is physically sinking under the weight of her administrative burden.
It's so poetic, though. She is the central pillar, holding up a massive, decaying institution, enforcing rules that are tearing the community apart. Her hemorrhaging is a direct biological reflection of the estate hemorrhaging its wealth.
The broken system literally breaks the operator.
Which leads us to the next day. Because that systemic failure overnight creates a leadership vacuum by morning.
Yeah, with Fengji bedridden, the younger generation steps in to exploit the void.
And this brings us right back to Shichun, the young sister who demanded the execution of her innocent maid, Rua. Because the formal management structure is paused, Shichun takes matters into her own hands.
She summons her sister-in-law, Yushi, who represents the broader family management.
Right, and Shichun issues an ultimatum. She demands that Yushi take Rua out of the garden permanently.
And Yushi tries to act as the voice of operational continuity. She pushes back, pointing out that throwing away a lifelong servant over a misunderstood reward is a massive overreaction.
She urges Shichun to just let it go. But here's where it gets really interesting. Shichun doesn't just reiterate her fear. She elevates her cruelty into a philosophical framework.
This is where it gets incredibly dark.
Yeah, she starts quoting ancient texts, stating that even a father and son cannot help each other. She mathematically eliminates every human variable from her life.
She claims that by cutting off her maid, and even threatening to cut off her sister-in-law, she is actually achieving a state of enlightenment, using the specific term liaowu.
I mean, is she actually enlightened? Or is she just weaponizing philosophy to justify being totally selfish and cold-hearted?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the use of the term liaowu is a brilliant perversion of theology.
How so?
Well, in Mahayana Buddhism, which deeply influences the text, true liaowu or spiritual awakening involves recognizing the emptiness of all things, which naturally leads to profound, boundless compassion for all suffering beings.
Right, you detach from your ego to serve the world.
Exactly. But Shichun aggressively inverts this. She uses the aesthetics of Buddhist detachment not to dissolve her ego, but to build an impenetrable fortress around it.
She is basically trying to rebrand cowardice as ancient wisdom. It is a pathological ego protection masquerading as spiritual growth.
That's spot on. She is establishing an artificial zero-risk state. She literally says that if you aren't a cold-hearted person, you can't be an enlightened one.
She's arguing that basic human empathy is a liability that prevents survival. It is the ultimate extreme of self-preservation.
Yeah, Shichun abandons the core Confucian duty of familial loyalty and mimics Buddhist monastic detachment solely to avoid the messiness of human association.
And when Yushi becomes disgusted by this overwhelming coldness and storms out, Shichun feels no regret at all.
None. She calculates that Yushi's absence simply means one less vector for gossip to reach her. She actively prefers the sterile safety of total isolation over the risk of community.
So what does this all mean? When you look at all of this, the parallels to modern behavior are just undeniable.